Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your attendance today. As you can see, I have the great pleasure and honor of hosting this august group of individuals. Very little introduction needed, so I'm going to jump straight in because I'm sure there are a bunch of questions that you all have and topics that you'd like to hear from this group on. The theme this week has been, how do we get out of the echo chamber? So I'll sort of set the scene just to sort of narrow down our conversation. I mean, of course, mining is the critical enabler of our necessary energy transition, mobilizing the material to affect that electrification and decarbonisation of our global economic system. And as we've heard this week, to achieve that, most of us agree that we need to shorten the exploration to production cycle, probably by advancing and adopting new technologies, but also attracting and retaining new talent. However, today, specifically, we've been asked to address whether there's a need or an opportunity to reconfigure relationships in the industry. Some topics that have been touched on this week have, to keep in mind, the design and implementation of national critical mineral strategies, perhaps the integration of producers, suppliers, and consumers, the OEMs, some of the product manufacturing intermediaries, energy suppliers. We've heard a lot about the perspectives of local communities relative to regional, national governments, and last but not least, I think increasingly important in the coming years is going to be the topic of nature. There's a big regulatory initiative around nature, beyond carbon, of course. But if we go to the heart of the reputation of this industry and society, nature probably sits there in the unconscious biases and preconceptions that people have towards our industry. So, moving from the what to the how indeed do we tell our story? And we hear from the ICMM the need to move away from appealing to the head, which we're all very good at, talking about decarbonisation numbers, to the heart, really getting our story to resonate with people. And of course, there must be constituencies who we are missing, because otherwise we wouldn't have a conference about an echo chamber. So, with all of that, I don't think, knowing the panel very well, we don't have in the industry people who are better equipped to talk to these topics. And I'm going to start by asking each of you, please, to comment on what do you think the echo chamber means. And if there's a specific example you'd like to give, let's have a few words from each of you, and then I've got a very long list of questions in case the audience doesn't have any for you. Mark, why don't you start?
Well, thanks, Philip, and thanks for the opportunity. I think we start with how do we tell our story, and been lots of debates on how we tell our story. I think the best way is to keep it simple. We have the most significant environmentally net positive footprint on the face of the planet as an industry. And that's my starting proposition. And in explaining that, I talk about agriculture being 40% of the Earth's surface, and without the products of mining, we would need 50 to 60% of the Earth's surface to feed the globe. Secondly, urban footprints, around urban and infrastructure footprints, about 15%. And we would need about 25% if we weren't able to build up or concentrate infrastructure in supporting 8 billion people on the planet. So saving or reducing human footprint by 30% for a commitment of 0.3% of the Earth's surface to mining isn't a bad positive impact in terms of what we do in supporting humans living on this planet and reducing our environmental impact. And if you look at, and I do a picture of a block of land 50 by 100 metres, and I do a little top bit in the corner and I say that's the mining bit, and if you could build and live on that block of land and you're in suburbia and somebody said to you that from that little top bit in the corner, 0.3% of your land, you could provide all the materials you need to, you could provide water, energy, food, and all the materials to build that building and that was the land you had to commit to support that, and you could use the rest of the land for a natural environment, biodiversity, would you think that was a good commitment? And it's interesting how that conversation's going. You take it on a global basis. The one example, faith-based engagements, getting to 2 to 3 billion people through the global faith-based networks, and talking them through those issues. It's been fascinating over the last 12 years to see the change in the dialogue from that group that represent about 30% of the globe. We need to do that with other stakeholders to get our story across. We have to change the dialogue.
Thank you. Mona.
Yes, so I think the mining industry is misunderstood. And most people that will be in the room here today would be sort of in the industry or on the sides of the industry. And I had the privilege of taking my son to Kamoa-Kakula this past week as part of a sort of job shadowing opportunity for him. And while we were flying there, they were asking questions like, is it very hot underground? And, you know, is it dirty? And I go back to when I grew up, and I was thinking about mining, and I think we all have these pictures in our head where you see the coal miners coming out of a mine, and it's sort of a Hollywood thing where you see them all with black faces from the coal as they come up from underground. And you also see those old mines with the thin little tunnels and, you know, dangerous environments with everything falling all over. And I think we've done a very bad job at selling modern mining. And we've done a very bad job at explaining to people how basic and fundamental mining is, similar to agriculture. You know, if you look at the youth today, they're all interested in tech. They all want to go to Silicon Valley, and they all want to be the next programmer and Mark Zuckerberg doing Facebook. But what underpins that industry is electricity, and what underpins electricity, for example, is something like copper. And where do you get copper from? And I just think there's a basic misunderstanding on what mining brings to the world. People just assume things appear out of thin air. They don't understand that it's such a fundamental industry. And I think that's part of the echo chamber, is we need to change that narrative. We need to start educating kids at a young age about what mining is and what modern mining is. And we also need to start educating people about how we mine, because I think a lot of people don't understand the scrutiny on the mining industry around being environmental stewards, about how we engage with communities and about how we treat our host governments. And there's been a completely new wave of mining over the past couple of years that people just don't appreciate because they're not in the industry. We as an industry know what effort goes into it, but people who's not in the industry, and they are our critics, they don't know what we do. They don't know the good work we do. And it all just looks like we're trying to make the industry a bit sexier than it is, and we should change that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that's been said. I think we do have to win hearts and minds, and educate people on the criticality of mining, and I think that's actually starting to happen. But for me, what we're trying to do and what I think is needed more is to really ignite the passion about, because mining has big challenges, right? And it's igniting the passion about trying to solve for those problems, which will attract people into the industry, because these are existential problems, essentially, not only for the industry, but for the future of the planet. So, stuff like 3 or 4% of the world's energy is used to make big rocks into small rocks. How do we reduce the power consumption that goes into mining? Water. Every mine has a water problem. Half of them have too much, half of them have too little. How do we solve for these problems, in different climatic zones around the world? Tailings is the biggest single waste stream on the planet. How do we reduce that waste stream through technology, and how do we bring engineering, innovation into the industry that's going to help tackle these challenges? So I think it's really igniting the passion about what the criticality of the industry, but also the problems that the industry needs to solve for to be able to deliver the critical minerals that are essential to the energy transition. And the other perspective I would have is to say that we talk about the echo chamber. I think it's plural. I think there are lots of echo chambers. By and large, the same thing is being said in each echo chamber, but we've got to get, the silos broken down. We've got to get, the industry, the suppliers, the regulators, governments, communities, potential future employees aligned around, what is needed in the industry, and to sort of use that sort of collaboration and sort of single voice, if you like, to then drive the policy changes that are required. We have to educate not only our employees and future employees, I think we have to educate governments and regulators, all of the stakeholders, if you like, in the industry, to how mining can do things, deliver what is needed in the future in terms of critical minerals, but do it in a much better way than it has ever done before. And I think we're in too many silos at the moment that really need to be broken down so that we're creating a system-wide approach to delivering the solution.
Thank you. So Mark, if I may come back to you, when I think of you and the years that I've had the pleasure of working with you and knowing you in the context of this topic, there are two specific themes that come to my mind. You've actually referred to one of them, which was the extraordinary initiative that you brought to the development of the Quellaveco project in Peru and winning local support, as you say, through the faith channel. So as you've already mentioned that, you conduct that point that I was going to ask you to expand on. But the other thing that I think about, and I'm sure many of the financial community in the room will remember, is your proclivity to put little wiggly charts up on big whiteboards and talk about Kaizen or lean manufacturing, really monitoring the detail. And I think to do the latter certainly goes to having the quality of information, the quality of service partners and equipment on the ground to be able to do that. And of course, we now live in a world where there's some very big machines that can take all of that data and process it as or maybe more quickly than your own brain can. So how do you think about those two opportunities, but also the relationship theme that underpins them?
So if you go to the first point, and if I'll cherry pick a couple of points out of it, but if I start with an investor perspective, in the US in 2021, I got asked the question, what's this ESG crap? And I said...
I was going to come on to that, but you carry on.
well, I was going to say it actually connects to the AI question and that type of thing, but that question triggered a response of, okay, are you talking sustainability? And we ended up talking about, at Anglo, how we thought about sustainability with our 7 pillars, so safety, environment, social performance, people, and having the right people in the organisation for the long term. We talked about replacing resources and reserves, critical in our industry. We talked about our competitive cost position. We talked about margins, returns, and balance sheet. And we sort of connected them all. And I said, you have to do all of the things. And in the world, the new technology, and John made the point about, we've got to do better. If you look at grinding and energy and making big rock small, we are a material player and we need to do more. So how do we connect that? And how do we look at new technologies and approaches to improve? And your lean manufacturing is a good starting point. But then how do you process all the information that's available and understand how you can apply new technologies to change your mining business is absolutely key. And one example, and I see Richard Morgan there, coarse particle flotation, different technology, different approaches, improve your throughput by 27%. This is the Salobo example, 27%, reduce water consumption by 50%, and from our point of view, same recovery, so a much better economic outcome. So how do you reduce your footprints, whether it's water consumption, energy consumption, and all the other inputs to improve your costs through that approach? And artificial intelligence for me has been a key, and I'm an investor in an artificial intelligence company on the basis I believe in it. We made a big commitment at Anglo to that approach So I think it's key, and certainly key to developing a modern, and Marna's point about a modern progressive industry is absolutely key. And as we go to depth, each mine increases depth 40 metres every year. We have to solve different problems as we go forward, and they're the sorts of technologies that will help us find solutions.
So just to broaden then the range of opportunities to be solved, Marna, if I may come to you, obviously your boss spoke earlier this week, apparently. I don't know if he said anything interesting, but
Apparently he did.
He always has something interesting.
you know, he certainly has a almost unique record in this industry of being a serial and successful entrepreneur, exploration-led, but also, you know, it's clear that that's, at least empirically, historically, that's where a lot of value has been created. And it's also clear, given that cycle, how important relationships are as an investor in countries to be able to benefit from all of that forward thinking. You spoke recently about the development of Kamoa-Kakula nearly 5 years ago now, and the inability to find any financial partners who are willing to support that project. In the end, you did, and you know, as they say, the rest is history. Is there anything there around, you know, that particular experience and that particular partnership that you'd like to comment on?
I think there's been a lot of progress since we originally had to go through trying to fund Kamoa-Kakula. And it's been a tremendous success story, but we didn't have many options available to us at the time. If we were to make a discovery today, which we're in the process of doing adjacent to Kamoa-Kakula, I think we would have multiple options in terms of getting funders coming into these type of world-class ore bodies, because I think risk appetite across the globe has changed, and people starting to realise that critical metals are important to secure for different jurisdictions. And you know, it's sort of a pity that the world didn't wake up to this a couple of years ago. But I think we're catching up, and we're catching up fast. And we've had very supportive shareholders in mainly the Chinese during the development of Kamoa-Kakula. But what we've also recently done, which was sort of unheard of, was raising local banking facilities for Kamoa-Kakula in the DRC. That wasn't something that was possible a couple of years ago. The banking industry is waking up to this. And it's possible if you have these type of ore bodies that you can that can support that sort of debt. We've raised over $1 billion, I think close to $2 billion worth of local facilities in the DRC, which is an absolute tremendous achievement, I think, and that's just on the back of one project. So it's going to start changing, and I think people will start looking at jurisdictions that were perceived more risky in the past. And we're de-risking it through relationships, as you rightly mentioned. The one thing Robert does very well is he employs very good people. So it's very important to spend a lot of time on the ground. I've got our COO here with me as well today. Mark was the CEO at Kamoa-Kakula when we executed it. And it was really, we spent a lot of time with government, taking them through the process of building a modern mine in country, and we ran investor tours for the government to show them what we do, because you can't expect a government that's sitting thousands of kilometers away from where the action is to understand and comprehend what you're doing on the ground if you don't go and show them what you are doing, how it works, how the legislation that they implement will impact on your business. So I think it's sort of it's stakeholder management across the board. It's investors, but it's also government, and then also your local community, and ensuring that you create a cohesiveness between all of them.
So, John, you must be itching to come in. A friend in the consulting business told me a few years ago now, in fairness, that the adoption of technology in mining today or then was akin to the auto industry in the 1970s. Not the very kind comment to make. Clearly, we've heard that that's changing, at least perhaps it's changed. You've obviously had a huge win in, amongst others, your partnership with Barrick on a very big, maybe one of the biggest new copper projects that's going to be built at Reko Diq. And I've learned a new phrase, HPGR. So when you think about your partnership with your customers, I guess there are two questions that I have for you. You know, is it only about efficiency, or are there step changes that you can co-solve, and how important is your institutional relationship with the regulators of your customers, i.e. the host governments of the companies with which you're partnering?
Yeah, so I'll be careful what I say in front of two important customers here. But
they've got it easy.
No, I think, look, you're right. The mining industry has been traditionally very slow to adopt new technologies and quite conservative, and generally the mindset has been, well, this worked for me before, so this is what I want again. So we're trying to sort of, and we have a pretty unique perspective given that we operate on most major mines around the world. Across all sort of commodities and geographies, so we see a lot of what's going on. So we're trying to push for more of a technology shift. And it's not that we're waiting for some new mousetrap or something that's going to come sort of solve the problem, because a lot of the technology is already here today. And I'll come on to HPGR as an example of that, to significantly improve, and it's not efficiency, to me it's productivity and sustainability, and you can have a win-win of delivering both. So we're trying to we have put together use cases, and Reko is an example of it, more of a hybrid, but adopting things like dry grinding, coarse particle flotation that Mark mentioned earlier, vertical stirred mills. You can put together a concentrator today that will use probably 40% less energy than a traditional concentrator, 50% less CO2, and you need much less water. And that sort of concept is available today. So, it's not as if we're waiting for something to come over the horizon to save us. A lot of the technology is there. We just have to drive the adoption now across the industry, and that gets you to the regulators because, if I'm honest, the regulators aren't well educated in this stuff. And I think the mining industry, the suppliers to the mining industry and the EPCMs, we need, again, coming back to collaboration, we need to work together to educate the regulators to sort of help them get to the answer sooner, to say, look, if you want to develop this mine in your jurisdiction, these are the kinds of things that you should be looking for in terms of what it can deliver, and influencing the miners to go down this route, so that we sort of converge on the sort of modern mine that Mana was just talking about there. So I think it's for us, the frustration is that it's available today. We just need to drive the change and sort of get the convergence of thinking around bringing in these new technologies. And finally, I would just specifically on the AI point, because I was talking largely about sort of hardware there, and reducing energy consumption, reducing water consumption. I think data and analytics, artificial intelligence has a massive role to play in optimizing mineral processing generally. I think when I observe, and my folks around the world work with customers. And I think we've had this conversation in the past, Mark, many mines are really, really inefficient. And there's a massive opportunity not only on new projects to build the mine of the future, but there's a huge opportunity to optimize and do better on both productivity and sustainability at many of the existing mines around the world as well.
Thank you. So Mark, coming back to an earlier comment, we've obviously hear a lot from the seniors in the industry that sustainability means ultimately your license to operate. You understand very well what that concept is. But in society, I suppose we focused a lot on the carbon question, and that sometimes crowds out some of the topics that you were talking about. And of course, I think at the back or the front of people's minds is the question of nature. So you've served on boards in many different metals in the industry. You've also served on boards outside the industry. Are there lessons to be learned from some of those experiences that you've had? And do you think the mining industry holds itself to a sufficiently high standard on these points?
Take the last question first. I think we're continuing to improve quite quickly now. And I think the exposure through the conversation on critical minerals is a real positive in terms of people understanding how important all minerals are, because at some point all minerals are critical if you don't have enough. You know, if we don't have enough fertilisers, or if we don't have enough this, then suddenly there's a new critical mineral and there's going to be lots of them. So that's the first point. The interesting one, I asked a board about 3 weeks ago, can anybody give me in a few words what sustainability means? And no one was prepared to have a crack at the definition, because it was clear that nobody had a clear view on the word, because it had been so misused and overused and inappropriately used. And so what we aligned on was, firstly, the word sustainability based on the Brundtland Commission concept. It's an economic concept, i.e., if you're in the mining industry, you need to deliver at least 10% free cash flow on your capital employed. That puts you in the first quartile of performers in our industry. And if you apply lean manufacturing, you can at least hold your costs flat. There's a good chance you'll make at least, through the cycle, 15% return to shareholders year on year. At Anglo, we did 22% over 9 years, average, on the basis of the cash flow objective, pay dividends, share price appreciation, and the fact we kept our costs flat. In real terms, we cut our costs 40% because we were building new technologies, new approaches, new mines, different approaches. And then the conversation on sustainability was that safety, environment, social performance are all absolutely consistent with making sure you have a sustainable business, because employees, local communities, governments are all getting something of a benefit from the business, and that's what sustainability is about. But it's about economic sustainability, making sure that we're not robbing from the future to deliver a return today, and making sure that conversation is understood, I think, is the responsibility of all of us in this industry. And so defining what sustainability is, I think, the most important starting point to manage the conversations from an industry perspective. And it goes back to that, here's what a modern mining company looks like, and here's how we contribute to sustainability.
So Mana, there's a trope or a perception maybe that in less developed countries or very isolated regions, things may be done differently. Is there an NPV positive business case for investing, for, I don't know, in renewable power, for example? And how does that translate in your experience building Kamoa-Kakula? By the way, I should add, 5 years ago, nobody had that the copper production from the DRC would increase by 1.5 million tonnes, and you've certainly delivered into that misconception.
Oh, so maybe a few answers, Jan. It's difficult to sort of talk about if you can't show it. I mean, just let's talk about HPGR. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a high-pressure grinding roll, and we've implemented it at Kamoa, part of a modern mine in the middle of the DRC. Tailings management, for example, we take 50% of our tailings back underground as backfill. It's in the DRC. Training of staff. I mean, DRC typically is open pit mining. We do underground mining. We had to teach miners to do long-haul stoping. We've got world-class training facilities, and the people are eager to learn, and they're sharp, and they're clever, and they operate those machines. We've got simulators. We've built a university. It's about your willingness to, you must have a can-do attitude. If you sit back and say, oh no, it's too risky, we're not going to do it, it's, you know, we should bring in people from Australia or Canada to come and mine in Africa because they know what they're doing, then you're going to fail. You have to back the people, and you have to educate the people and empower the people to deliver. And if you need to, we're building a smelter. We're building the biggest smelter in Africa. It will be commissioned early next year. We've sent people to China, to Zambia, to go and work on smelters for the past 6 months, because our own people will be operating that smelter with a small contingent of expats that's got experience in the industry. So it's about how you approach things. Is it easy? It's much easier to go and recruit or get a contract with Burncut or whoever in Australia to come and do your mining. That's easy. That's one contract. It's hard to educate people. It's hard to build those facilities. It's hard to do the skill transfer, but you must do it, because in the long term, that is what makes your mine sustainable. And you have to uplift the community. You know, there's a lot of poverty in Africa. We focus on different things when we operate in different jurisdictions, and it's about that upliftment and empowerment that we bring to the areas where we operate. You were asking about an MPV positive hydro project. I think that could be probably a project with a two-year payback in DRC, because that's one of our biggest challenges is power. You've got water challenges elsewhere, we've got a power challenge. So we are working with local entrepreneurs who want to develop new hydro, and there's a lot of bankable projects that's easily executable that I think we will see coming online within the next 2 to 3 years.
Very quickly, John, before we kicked off the stage, I'd like to come back to talent. You're at the high-pressure end of the coolth of the industry. How do you think about talent, and how does talent think about you and this industry?
Yeah, well, I think for me it comes right back to what are we trying to do here, and what's the purpose of our company, of our customers. What are we trying to deliver here for the planet? So back to where we started with the first question, you've got to create that sort of passion and energy about, this whole industry is absolutely critical to a better future for the planet. So start with that, because we need new people into the industry, we need people from different sectors to come in and help tackle these challenges. And I think first of all, you've got to connect them at a purpose level, and then get beneath that to what I said earlier around, okay, these are massive challenges we've got to solve for here. We need the best engineers, we need the best software coders, we need AI, we need all of these people to come into the industry to help crack the code and solve the challenges. So I think we've got to get that message really, really clear. And when you do that, it is quite interesting. We've had a lot of success hiring people out of Google in Texas and out of the tech industry, from areas you wouldn't expect, because they say, actually, that's really interesting. I can make a difference. And if you can connect with folks in that way, the graduates coming out of university, the smart people from other industries, then we can solve this problem. But we've got to connect at that level. We've got to create the vision and the passion to get smart people into the industry to deliver it.
Thank you. Well, if there's 30 seconds left for one final word, Mark, 30 seconds for final comments, as we have run out of time.
Absolutely agree. How do we bring young people in the industry to create a future? It's about helping them understand how important our industry is, what difference they can make with the skills that they bring to our industry, and we bring all those pieces together. It is, along with agriculture, the most important industry on the face of the planet, and we need them to make sure the world is a better place by engaging and joining us in the mining industry.
Thank you. Mana, final word from you.
Yeah, so it's the eggs in the recipe to bake a cake. We need to convey that message. We need to show what we are doing, and don't play those old reels of the movies. Try and change our image. Show that we're modern, show that we are part of the solution, and we're doing it the right way across the globe.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, for me, it's simply, joined up thinking. Let's all get on the same page. It sort of reminds me a little bit of the, that famous sort of Morecambe and Wise one-liner. We're playing all the right notes, but just in the wrong order. So let's get them all lined up.
Excellent. No, thank you. Please join me in thanking this excellent panel.
Thanks.